Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Knowledge. Welcome to Brews and Reviews, Hip Hop and Hops album reviews. Special Memorial Day edition today. And first off, we got to say thank you to all the troops out there and RIP to everyone who lost their lives serving this country. But today we've got the special Memorial Day top 10 countdown of memorial hip hop songs and tributes. And today I am sipping on a Sierra Nevada Hop Bullet 8% IPA from Chino, California, and that's a great Memorial Day beer. So let's get into this list of great tracks. First off, there was a lot to choose from in this particular subgenre in hip hop. There's a lot of dead Homiez songs out there, a lot of paying respect to those that came before us. There will definitely be a part 2 of this because I couldn't make everything make the cut in just having 10 songs on this countdown. So look out for part 2. Maybe next year I'll drop something like that. It's so prevalent in hip hop to drop the tribute song that some of the best to ever do it are on this list. Some of the top names in hip hop history made this list in this particular top 10. And I didn't necessarily pick what the songs are talking about or who they're talking about. I didn't rate these songs based on the strength of the particular person that they're paying tribute to. I chose the songs based on the strength of the songs alone and the lyrics that were involved, and not necessarily who the song was meant for, although we will hear some big names that these songs are a tribute to as we go through this list. So that being said, unfortunately, there's no Sean P. I haven't heard the best song, Sean P song yet. I haven't heard the best tribute to him. Hasn't been done yet. Although there's songs out there, there's not songs that are in the realm of what actually made this list. And the same with Nipsey Hussle. There's just not the stellar song that's come out to honor him yet. At number 10, I've got Nas's We Will Survive. And there were a couple Nas songs that I could have chosen here, Thug's Mansion being one of them, the lesser known Just a Moment, which I loved off of one of his worst albums, but that was a highlight off of one of his worst albums. But I chose We Will Survive for several reasons. Now, I know that he bit off his own song on this, and a lot of people have problems with him kind of remaking one of his better, more known songs in making it into We Will Survive. But to me, that makes the tribute that he's giving here all the more touching, and that he's taking one of his best known songs and reworking it to be about the deaths of Biggie Smalls and Tupac. This definitely had the best lyrics of any Tupac dedication, any Biggie dedication that we've heard, and Nas had a very personal relationship with both of them. I know a lot of people say that he was exploiting Pac by including him on this song, knowing that Nas and Pac had beef at the time of Tupac's death. Well, Tupac had beef with a lot of people at the time of his death, and to me that made it an even more touching tribute. And also, it was, you have to understand, at that time there were 3 people at the top, 3 people that were known as the best MCs in the game, and that was almost undisputed at the time, and that was Nas, Pac, and Biggie. And now that 2 of them are dead, the one that's left, he made a tribute to both of them. So it's something that had to be done, and Nas did it very well with We Will Survive. The best line on this, he says, "I missed your wake, not because I'm fake, because I hate to see somebody so great in that way." I can relate to that. Coming in at number 9, we've got Atmosphere with Flicker. This is the most recent entry on this list, and it's included. It's Slug reminiscing over the MC Idea, an underground MC that was one of his partners on the label Rhymesayers. And this song is a very personal, very real story. Slug doesn't sugarcoat it or idealize the memories at all. He talks about the very real truth and what was actually going on in their relationship at the time and how he feels about it. Which makes it all the more tragic because he's talking about the problems that they had in their relationship and the distance that had grown between them. And you can hear Slug's raw emotion that he's kicking on this and the guilt that he feels for not being there for Idea and growing apart from him at the time that Idea had actually died and man suffered from his drug addiction, Slug feels that he could have helped had he been there and had been closer to Idea like he was in the past. The best line from this song: so I wrote these words to describe what I cry about, but I'm certain if you were here right now, you'd ridicule these lyrics, you'd hate this chorus, you'd probably tell me that the concept is too straightforward. So that's really cool that Slug is criticizing even his own song from the perspective of Idea, and he knows Idea so well that he knows that Idea wouldn't even like his own tribute song. Number 8 is The Message by Dr. Dre. This closes out his seminal album, 2001, very well known, very dissected album, a classic in hip hop history. And this song rounds it all out after all those hits. Then it gets somber and reflective, and Dre talks about something real. Now, I did have a problem with this song for a while because as a writer, it's hard for me to realize how somebody could use somebody else's lyrics in something this personal, something that somebody else wrote. That Dre could be saying those, but I've realized over time that it's not important that he wrote them. It's important about how Dre feels, and that he feels these lyrics about his brother, and that these lyrics are for his brother. They're the sentiment pushing forward through all of his pain, and it doesn't matter if he wrote them or not. Dre is the one saying them and the one that's feeling them when he spits them out on wax. So that being said, we all know that Royce the 5'9" wrote these lyrics, and I wanted Royce to make the cut. He's got a song talking about proof. I almost included that one. Maybe it'll be on the next one. But in a way, Royce still makes this list because he wrote these very emotional lyrics that Dre spits about the loss of his brother. One of the best lines on this one is, I'm anxious to believing real G's don't cry. If that's the truth, then I'm realizing I ain't no gangsta. So that comes after the NWA era, after the Chronic era, when Dre was starting to get more reflective about his own persona and everything that entailed. Number 7 is Naughty by Nature, Mourn You Till I Join You. Now, this was a surprise to me when it came out, but of all the songs released about Tupac's death, this one was the most poignant, the most personal, and the one that rang true with me the most. You could tell that Treach from Naughty by Nature had a real relationship with Pac, because he spits that out here. He talks about a lot of things that were very personal between him and Pac, and a lot of experiences that only a close friend would have with somebody like that, such as visiting him in the hospital the first time that he got shot and watching him recover. So Treach was there for those early years in Pac's career, and throughout this track, he reminisces on what that was like and what Pac was like back then. This was a surprise to me when it came out, because Naughty by Nature, to me at this time, I had conflated in my mind them being kind of corny, but I think that was just due to the commercial success and what they had with Hip Hop Hooray and OPP, that there were a lot of people listening to them. So sometimes a flaw that I've had in the past is relating people going commercial or people getting a lot of popularity with being corny. So I realized over time that a lot of Naughty by Nature stuff was real, and especially for that era, they were innovators, and they proved that here with this track about Tupac. One of the best lines from the song is where he's talking about that Tupac was both loved and feared. I like that because that ties into the alias that Pac assumed on his very last album that came out when he was still alive. Machiavelli was the writer that talked about whether it's better to be loved or feared, and concluded that it was better to be feared. But Treach says that Pac was both loved and feared, and that was true in the game at the time before his death. But the line that holds it all down, and if you can get him the perspective of the time, this line is even more poignant, where Treach says, "We was back and forth, borough to projects for forts. Damn, I wish they knew how much you loved New York." So as the West Coast guy that was at the epicenter of the East Coast, West Coast beef, and everything the media played up there, and Pac was the West Coast guy, Treach was saying he loved New York, his heart was in New York, he came from New York, And Treach wishes that everybody knew that he still loved it, because he'll be remembered in his death as the guy from the West Coast that was in the East Coast, West Coast beef. Number 6 is Ice Cube's Dead Homies. This was one of the first songs where a hardcore rapper let all of their emotions out. And it was about a friend of his, so he really brought the raw emotion to the track, and talked about the feelings that someone goes through when they know someone who's died young. And it sounds like Ice Cube started to experience a lot of this over time in his younger years. One of the best lines is, "I remember we painted our names on the wall for fun. Now it's rest in peace after every one." So that projects a stark reality in what was going on in Ice Cube's hood at the time, and that, you know, tagging and graffiti is something that really young people do. So he's talking about shortly after they were tagging things up, they had to write rest in peace on those tags, because just shortly after they did that as a young person, they were dead as a young person. So this was one of the first kind of memorial tracks that was really out there, especially from somebody that was so gangsta hardcore as Ice Cube was at the time. And it was a track that hit really hard, and I think impacted a lot of people when it came out. Number 5's Tupac's Life Goes On. There were a lot of Pac songs to choose from. There were a lot where he predicted his own death, many things that could have been included here, but this one is one of the most recognizable. It's off his best-selling album, and what I think is really interesting about this is it wasn't just somber. This one, it provided hope in what he was saying on the chorus, "Life goes on." There was hope beneath the somberness of the track and beneath the death and everything that was being experienced by Pac, and everything that he saw and people that he knew were dying. He mentions a couple people by name in the song that actually lost their lives, but there was hope underneath. Life goes on. So he's talking about everybody that passed before him, but he's got to do what he's got to do. He's got to move on, and everybody else has to move on. And the hope that he projected in the song made it all the more tragic, knowing that he would die shortly after writing this song. And that's what I think is really interesting about this song when you listen to it these days. The third verse, of course, prognosticates his funeral, like many of his songs do. And the best line from the song comes from that verse, where he says, "Give me paper and a pen so I can write about my life of sin. A couple bottles of gin in case I don't get in." Pac was such a prolific writer in life that he even wanted to write in death. So that's what makes that line so interesting, and makes it resonate still to this day. Number 4 is Notorious Big's Miss You. So from Pac's best-selling album to Biggie's best-selling album, they both had songs that were tribute songs and songs about death, and they both wrote these songs shortly before they would both reach their own demise. So this one was actually released after Biggie's death, and that's what made it even more interesting, because while we were listening to the album Life After Death, we knew that Biggie was already gone, yet there was this song where he was paying tribute to somebody else that lost their life. And this was somebody that he knew personally. You could tell from his lyrics that it was very personal. You could tell the guilt that he felt. While he also includes a story on the third verse about a young girl that died young, and nobody could tell a story like Biggie. It was really Biggie's guilt about his friend that died from being in the drug game, and Biggie got him into the drug game, that he was really getting across on this track. It also had a very emotional chorus by 112, and this was something that Puffy did well. You could see Puffy's influence on the track and this chorus and what would become of Puffy a little bit later. But it was Biggie that really tied in the whole song together and made it one that's going to last. And his best line from the song, talking about the guilt that he felt for his friend dying, where he says, "Gave him half my paper, told him go that route. Few months he got his brain blown out." So right after Biggie got him into the drug game, his friend was killed. Coming in at number 3, we've got Jedi Mind Tracks featuring R.A. the Rugged Man. Uncommon Valor, a Vietnam Story. Now, this is the perfect Memorial Day song because it is about R.A.'s father that went to Vietnam and the consequences of that thereafter. It's a touching tribute to his father. So I'm at the cemetery for this one since it is the Memorial Day edition, and I'm right by my father's grave to honor my father as well, just like R.A. did in this verse. Now, no one remembers Vinnie Paz from this song because R.A.'s verse goes oft. The raw emotion that he displays, the stellar flow that he has on display makes this one of the best guest appearances of all time, and the fact that it's a true story just makes it all the much more real. This song is sad from beginning to end, and it shows the true anguish that some soldiers go through from the very beginning, talking about the mental conflicts of being in a war, to the very end where he's talking about his father getting infected with Agent Orange and the consequences that came after that. It all makes for some really real lyrics. Some of the best lyrics from R.A.'s verse on this thing. Bang, bang, bullet hit my chest, feel no pain. To my left, the captain caught a bullet right in his brain. Body parts flying, loss of limbs, explosions, bad intentions. I see my best friend's intestines. So nothing could be more real about the realities of war and more fitting for the Memorial Day tribute than this particular song. Number 2 is Wu-Tang Clan's Tearz, from one of the best albums of all time, arguably the best debut album of all time. This song closes it all out with a very somber tone after bringing the ruckus from the beginning, after hitting you hard over the head with all these different MCs and all these different styles, all these flows. Then they end it with something somber, reflective, sad, mournful, and that's the track Tearz. We got our first glimpse on this of the emotional storyteller that Ghostface would become in his verse, on the second verse on the track. It's a glimpse of the future and what we would see in Ghost, and let you know that he was maybe something a little bit different from the rest of the clan. He had a little more emotion in his voice and what he was portraying here, where he tells the story about a guy who caught HIV, and that was very prevalent and a very strong worry on people's minds at the time about HIV. So it was interesting that Ghost pulled that all into his verse. It was probably something on his mind while he was running around as a young guy at the time in the early 90s. But the most poignant verse rather, is from RZA, Prince Rakeem, in his old Prince Rakeem yelling style. He felt at the time that you had to yell to express emotion, but it definitely worked on this track. And his verse fits perfectly with the chorus because the sample is after laughter comes tears. And RZA is talking about an imaginary story about his brother dying. And he's talking about first some of the good memories. So after laughter, they're laughing, they're having a good time, but then comes tears. He talks about his brother dying. And the best line RZA says on this song, he says, "Oh man, how do I say goodbye? It's always the good ones that have to die." That's been sampled a lot since. That's something that sticks out, and it just made for a great track. Now, a couple honorable mentions I want to say here. I couldn't include everything. Some of these I wanted to get on, I couldn't quite get it. That, of course, is Thug's Mansion by Nas, I mentioned already. We'll Always Love Big Papa by The Lox. And 2 that people think might be number 1, I do have to mention. We've got The Crossroads by Bone Thugs and Harmony. That song was just everywhere at the time. It was overplayed, and I did like it at the time, but I just can't include it here because it was so commercial, and I feel like there were much better poignant lyrics and much more personal lyrics, and not something that was just reaching for mainstream radio play as that song was. And that goes even more so for the next song, which is I'll Be Missing You by Puff Daddy, Puffy at the time. This song came out right after Biggie Smalls' death, and you could tell that Puff Daddy was really hurt by Biggie Smalls' death, but at the same time, everybody knew that this was a cash grab, and in a way, he was kind of exploiting the death of his friend to come out with this song and launch his own rap career off of this song. And the sample was just completely lifted from the original song. So I can't support that as much, because even though it stands up to a lot of what people are doing today, I can't support it much, because at the time I didn't think that it was right to not creatively sample songs. Number 1 is Pete Rock and CL Smooth's They Reminisce Over You, T.R.O.Y. Now, this is an old school joint. It's an iconic song from an iconic producer. It's an iconic sample. That saxophone over that thing never gets old. It's stuck in my head right now. If you remember this song, if you reminisce over this song, it'll be stuck in your head. It just sticks with you. In turn, this song has been sampled so many times going forward. If you don't know the history of rap, and you don't know the 90s, early 90s, then you need to know this song. This was a great producer in Pete Rock in his formative years, hitting his first classic and his first great sound, all coming together at one. The song was dedicated to the loss of their friend, T.R.O.Y., so they created a backronym, They Reminisce Over You. T.R.O.Y. was a member of the group Heavy D and the Boys. He fell from a large distance at a concert, and they were dealing with that loss at the time that this came out. The track does veer a little bit from the subject of T.R.O.Y. Lyrically, but it's more about how CL wants to be remembered and how he wants people to reminisce over him. And ironically, in the end, it's Pete Rock that we really reminisce about, not CL. I don't know where he's been lately or if he's been doing anything at all. But Pete Rock, of course, is a #1 hip hop producer still in the game. The most iconic thing about this song, besides the saxophone sample, is that each verse ends with the backronym, They Reminisce Over You. And so that's what I'm going to put as one of the best lines from the song. He says, so Pete Rock hit me with enough respect, do, when they reminisce over you, listen. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my Memorial Day list. Click this video that's next to me right now if you want to see more of Brews and Reviews. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time when I reminisce over you, my God.